It says live up in the upper right.
All right, we are live, and what we need to do is tell people to switch over to a new piece. So we're gonna kind of just jump right into it. I'm gonna let you two get going on the first question, and then tie people on through social media onto this new link. And then
how do we get the link so we can share it?
I'm gonna send it to both of y'all on different platforms.
Okay.
So
I got a fan on that. Interrupting the audience?
No, I think it should be fine. Should be fine. Now just let me check this out so folks make sure that you have the link. The correct link. Or you can just tell people to watch us on YouTube, Jared. Tell them to go to the YouTube and let me.
Which YouTube though?
To the Jackson Rising YouTube.
I know, but where would I find the link to that?
Let me try to get it to you just real quick.
Because I think the initial link we're not using that one anymore, right?
It won't work. No, we're not using that. That one will not work. People have to now plug into this one to even be a part of or to see any of this conversation outside of just maybe seeing it recorded, right? So we will have to get that to them another way.
Okay, are we live or are we live?
We are live.
Live or live?
We are live as live can be.
Well, just send me the link and we can start sharing it, and let's go ahead and get started then.
Are we live?
Right?
We are live.
Live or live?
We are live as live.
Well, that don't sound live. That sound recorded.
We can start sharing it, and let's go ahead and get started then.
All right, y'all there?
Yep.
Okay, so what you probably heard there was some feedback from me. So I got the link. Let me now send it to you. I'm just sending it to y'all now, and then we'll get started.
Where are you sending the link, Kelly?
I'm gonna send it to y'all on Facebook.
Okay.
So we can start there.
Ooh, technology just don't want to act right. Okay.
Nah, my ass is just too old. And I thought I did everything right, and I probably did, but just they changed one thing, and then I'm out the game. Okay, so y'all got the link.
Jesus.
And I'm about to send it to everybody else.
Man.
All right, so y'all got that?
Yeah, we should probably go ahead and start.
Just get this out, and then while we're talking, I can keep doing some more of this.
Can you get into my Twitter?
Can't even get into your Twitter?
No. Okay, there it is. It's acting up.
All right, well, let's get rolling, y'all. And then we can keep doing it, and I'll keep posting while we go ahead. So just to formally get everything started, I want to thank everybody for sticking with us these past 15 minutes. If you're joining us live, we're using a new link. Please let folks know that on your Facebook and Twitter and other social media feeds so others can join in on this conversation. We had a few technical difficulties, but we worked a few things out. Thanks to Jared's ingenuity. So I'm going to cut through and do the shortest introduction that we can possibly have since we already lost 15 minutes. And first and foremost, just want to thank everybody for tuning in now. If you're going to check this out later, on behalf of Cooperation Jackson and the other entities within the Cooperation Jackson that are helping to work this and promote it, folks kind of behind different scenes in the cracks and crevices, some of the young folks that are helping us out put this together, from Maroon Media and Revolutionary Resonance Arts and Culture Co-op, and also with Deep Dish TV. This is the second, The Myth of American Democracy, Part 2. This one's going to focus on the role of elections. And we have with us two good friends and comrades. We have Jared Ball joining us from Maryland, and we have Tandasizwe Chimaranga joining us from California. And we're just going to jump right into it since we're a bit late. Folks can get to know you. We'll post some things on you all's bios and background a little bit later. But just to kind of jump into it, just to let folks know, if you are tuning in to hear a debate about last night's elections, you've really come to the wrong place. If you're tuning in to hear a debate or a dialogue about Hillary versus Trump, you've also come to the wrong place. We are going to try to take a more deeper dive into the very role of elections in so-called democracies, bourgeois democracies, and bourgeois democracies, meaning societies that are run by the rich and for the rich and set up by the rich. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to start the question off with both Tundi and Jared. And I'm going to ask it in the way that I think is most direct, that gets most to the point, and provide probably the most provocative way possible. And that is, we can start with this. What do you all think is the role of elections and electoralism for disposable people like the Black working class? What impact at all does this system and its electoral process, what strategic impact, meaning impact does it have on our life at all? So, Tanda, you want to start with that and take it away? Then we go with Jared next.
Start with Tandi, okay. The screen is gone completely black for me, so I can hear you all. Can you hear
we can see you? Yeah, we can see you fine. So it's probably just
okay. Okay.
We can see you fine.
Okay. So I have a very short attention span, and when I'm not being intellectually stimulated, I can fall asleep on you pretty quick. So I was sitting in a intro to political science class in my junior college. I don't remember anything from that class except for one thing. The only thing I remember from that class, and I don't even remember how or why I woke up in time to hear the professor say it, but the only thing I remember from that class, and that has stayed with me all of these years, is he stated, and I'm paraphrasing because it's been several years now, I don't remember his exact words. He said the Electoral College was created because the founders knew they couldn't trust regular people with this vote. And I remember thinking, word, and then falling back asleep. And that stayed with me all these years. The Electoral College is just like so many other technicalities that we have to deal with in bureaucracies. It's like almost like a maze of understanding that the regular person, the hurdles that a regular person has to get through in order to deal with something substantial. Electoral voting, the Electoral College, means us absolutely no good as a captive people, as a colonized people. What is an Electoral College? Who is an elector? What is an elector? How do they even, why they do not vote, and that popular vote makes the decision. So that ought to tell you something right there. The founding fathers, who were men of property, free, white, and 21, everything that they have done, everything that they have created has been in their own image and in their own interest. Declaration of Independence, just like the Constitution, did not factor us in as human beings, and what our needs would be. The same thing with every other decision that they have made.
Jared, you want to touch in on that?
Sure. First of all, I agree, and then but and as I keep saying, I mean, I would even go back before the Electoral College to what again James Madison and others wrote in the Federalist Papers, which basically just sort of prefigure what Tandy is talking about, where very clearly Madison, Hamilton, John Jay, and others made clear that this will be a white country for English-speaking Christian Protestants specifically, with money. And that the Congress will be established to replicate the British upper and lower houses of Parliament, and create, as Hamilton said, in the Senate, a permanent barrier, as he called it, to any kind of progress or change from below. And as Madison again made clear in number 10, the point of the vote was to extend the republic and the reach of the plutocrats, the landowning white men, to expand their reach and their influence, while giving the illusion of participation to other white men with property, as participating in some sort of not democracy, which Madison called a wicked project and a disease, but a republic that was meant to protect the faction, as Madison called it, or what we would now call the 1%. The only thing I would add to that, and to specifically answer your question about what does this mean for a colonized and disposable population, in varying degrees, I think what it means for everybody is that the elections are meant to create an illusion, again, of participation, make people think that they're involved in a process that they're not really involved in. And then I think, another point, a part of that is to reinforce or reify acceptable leadership, whether it's a politician or whether it's the pundits who tell us who to vote for, or specifically now the liberals who tell us to be more pragmatic and vote for Hillary. All of these to borrow Chomsky's phrase, quadrennial extravaganzas are meant to as I said, not only create this illusion of participation, but give this false, ascribe a false sense of legitimacy to whatever exists as so-called leadership, who all exist to bring us back to safe patterns of behavior. So that's really what I think is the purpose of these elections, and I don't think it's ever been more clear than the one we're witnessing right now at the presidential level.
However, if I could jump back in, though.
Go right ahead.
What I put forth, and I believe what Jared puts forth regarding electoral voting, or the electoral voting system, the Electoral College, in terms of elections and votings purely, I think that there are times when we can utilize it strategically. I think that there are times when we can use it for wiggle room, most notably during when local issues are at stake. So I'm not necessarily against, but the Electoral College is not something to benefit from at all.
So let's dive in this a little bit more, because I know we get asked this question a lot based in Jackson, and folks, I think everybody knows within the vein that you laid out, Tunde, that we, this being the New African People's Organization, the Malcolm X grassroots movement, the Jackson People's Assembly, and a host of other kind of allied organizations, that at least over the past 7 years now, we have been using electoral politics, that is running candidates in local municipal elections, to try to move a strategy. And I think to that vein, we would have to say, from experience, that we agree that it can be used as a tactic. But I think the thing that at least I would personally try to make a distinction is that for me, I accept the fact of the system that we are subject to. just by living in this society and having very little power. So I recognize, the power of the state and all of its institutions, from the police to the tax assessor, to the governor, to the president, to the Congress. I recognize all those as facts of force, right? That they have power over me. But I try to base my political action in both a rejection of their power and, in fact, the rejection of the very nature of the state and the society in which they have imposed upon this society, and struggling to use all means available to radically transform this society. And I think, at least from my vantage point, elections, electoral parties, particularly within this framework, and even the state itself, I do not think are the key institutions for transforming society and creating a better society. And so what I think it would be helpful if we could start having a more serious conversation of kind of exposing the role of elections that I think all three of us agree upon, which is to legitimize the existing structure in society, right? Which is a settler, colonial, social order, first and foremost at its foundation, rooted in white supremacy and other forms of oppression. But as a capitalist imperialist world power that seeks to dominate the entire globe, and there are degrees of us kind of participating in that electoral process, which justify that system. And I think we have to figure out, how do we create a coherent practice that is about transforming the society, but does not necessarily, and Tanya's going to get on me for using big words, but does not reify the existing social order, right? To not recreate it, continue to justify it, continue to legitimize it. How do we challenge that? I think that is one of the critical things that I want us to have a more serious conversation about. And it's something, just to finish my little editorializing, it's something that I think we had a profound opportunity to do in this election cycle that hasn't been done, particularly the last couple of months. And what do I mean by that? So there was a tremendous space to kind of talk about socialism, which traditionally has been a taboo subject, right? Something that's not allowable in legitimate political discussion in the United States. Well, there was a little crack in the little opening. And I think some of the social movements have also created other kind of fissures and cracks, to talk about, the movement for Black Lives being one of them. Mm-hmm. But I don't think we've exploited that space to have a deeper conversation about organizing and about what a real alternative could and should be.
Right.
So how do we open that space and at least try to move a younger generation out of kind of a dead end trap of converting and trying to shift all of their energy into electoral politics? So the floor is open for either one of y'all to jump in on that.
Well, we keep saying electoral politics, but is it electoral politics, or is it utilizing elections as a tactic? Again, utilizing local elections, not dealing with who's running for president, not dealing with the electoral college, which can vote on a whim or is beholden to the interests of the Democratic or the Republican Party. Which one are we talking about? Are we talking about a movement utilizing all tactics, everything is on the table in terms of local elections? But are we talking about not utilizing elections at all? Period.
No, go ahead.
Attacked.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Elections are attacked again. The technology dropped me, so I missed what came before your statements. But I believe that everything should be on the table in terms of a movement that is counter to what we currently live under. What we currently live under is a white supremacist state. Capitalism is the economy, and because of the social milieu, we're dealing with heteronormativity, we're dealing with patriarchy. It's a very, very vicious system that has control over our people. What do we utilize to make space, to have breathing room, to create that kind of space where we can have not only dialogue about our vision, how do we actually implement our vision, right? So I think one thing is we have to have a dialogue about what it is we want, the type of society, the type of world we want to live in. And we also have to take those steps to concretely put it into place as we are struggling against this particular monster that we live under.
Jared, anything on that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know exactly. I mean, on the one hand, I'm not thrilled with using electoral politics as a strategy for change at all. But at the same time, I'm struggling, particularly at this point in my life, to find another way to best approach that conversation that's not abstract, that's not vague. So what I would like to see happen is more of us who share the kind of politics that are represented in this conversation develop ourselves, as I know we've talked a lot about offline, into an electoral political option for the purposes of engaging people where I think they're most comfortable in dealing with some of the political challenges that we face, and without getting lost in what I think too often becomes vague and highly contested ideological arguments. So initially I would just, for instance, when I think about what you all had done down there in Jackson, I mean, part of what Baba Chokwe was able to do was harness not only his own personal reputation and long-standing, deep committed work with the community, which is very different from what most political politicians very different from how most of them come to these kinds of efforts. But there was also a great amount of political education and pre-organization, at least from what you obviously know better than I do, that seemed to have gone into that effort that doesn't seem to exist in many other spaces. So making those electoral efforts less effective or less potentially effective. So again, what I would just like to see happen is that for those of us who agree with the politics on this call, to say, well, just as a for instance, let's work within the existing structure of the Green Party to recruit more of our folks to that party, to take more positions of power within that party and use its existing structure to engage electoral politics from the local to the national. But while doing that, in the process, using that platform to engage discussions ideologically and politically that we would like to engage and organize around. So, for instance, when you brought up the issue of the conversation of socialism, my interpretation of what happened with Bernie Sanders was quite the opposite of what I heard a lot of people suggesting was the positive in his discussion of socialism and expanding the reach of that concept in this country. What I saw was him rebranding it in a way that was not very socialist, that was threatening the concept itself and doing a disservice to what should be conversations around socialism. So I would like to see us reapproach that that effort by ourselves leading these efforts within electoral politics, because that seems to be the best way to get people to have a conversation about making change. Otherwise, it just seems to be a lot of vague rhetoric and event planning as opposed to political education and movement building, and no real attempt to actually seize political power and redistribute the goods, wealth, and services in society. So I don't know if my point got lost in that ramble, but that is kind of what I would like to see happen. That to use electoral politics and electoral campaigns to recruit people to more radical levels of organization and political education.
So some of us, I think, a little lost the technology.
Kind of gone out, Kali. I can't hear a word. I don't know if you can hear me.
I hear you.
Okay. I was hearing the echo from Kali and then nothing.
Yeah, he went out. It's unfortunate.
It still says live in my upper corner.
Yeah, we're still live.
Somebody gonna see me eating these pistachios then.
Yep. Yep.
Well, until Kali goes back. Oh, is he back? So, Jared, when you say electoral, you mean the whole thing, elections, period.
Well, that's all I mean. And so I'm not talking about, anything else politically than elections, using the vote. So when I'm talking about electoral politics, that's what I mean. That if I don't have a lot of hope that the vote will bring about change, but I do have hope that organizing around what many of us think the vote can do might lead us to something else. So that's why I keep trying to say, like, if we can get people to just make the initial break in terms of voting with the Democratic Party and join some sort of other effort, whether it's within the Green Party or something else, I think that's an important step that we can take that's relatively safe. It's it's legal, and it allows us to have conversations and develop organizations that are a little more progressive and potentially exciting. But anyway, but that's what I mean, because what I've also found is that, it's hard to, once we get off the streets from the rallies around Black Lives Matter or police violence or, anything else, once the rally is over, once the event is over, even once some of the meetings are over, it seems to me that there's not a lot of clarity in terms of what kinds of actions we can actually take to see some sort of power. And then a lot of it just, then these seasons come around and then a lot of the effort gets, just siphoned right back off to the Democratic Party. Or people just saying, I'm not going to vote at all and just going off and doing something else. But even that something else, as positive as it may be, moving us towards assuming political power.
And I think a lot of that has to do with our immaturity and lack of experience in movement building and, for lack of a better term, nation building.
Right.
That we get bogged down in endless, vague, ideological warfare, and we end up not doing anything. And so, as opposed to seeing voting, for example, as a tactic where we can vote out a prosecutor who has a history of never ever prosecuting those who are anti-Black, those who harm the Black community, we don't mount an effort to get that person out of office. We don't mount an effort to make a statement, i.e. everybody stay home, and even though that person might win, they win because only 2 people voted. We don't find a candidate, or groom a candidate, or run a candidate who will be, for lack of a better word, loyal to the Black community. So we don't engage in that type of work, but yet we talk about we want a new system or we want a new nation. Well, how are we going to build this nation? Where are we going to get are we going to do like a Sekou Odinga, or are we going to do like a Frank Wilderson? We're going to get up and go to Africa, where they've been engaged in actual national liberation movements and the work of building a new society. Are we going to do that and then come back over here and do that? Or are we going to take the reins in our hands right here where we are and do some work with what we currently have? I think that one of the things we do is we get a Toyota placed before us, and we keep crying about, I wanted a Cadillac. Get in the car and drive the Toyota, go get your Cadillac. use what you've got in front of you in order to get what it is that you want, get what it is that you need. You know, one of the things that Sundiata Acoli talks about, one of our new African political prisoners, or prisoners of war, in his book, Some Solutions or Things to Do, dual power. You know, not only trying to infiltrate and utilize the system as it is, but building your own systems. If we're not going to run a candidate for example, district attorney who's going to hold police officers accountable, what are we going to do in the community to hold police officers accountable? Are we going to develop a squad that is going to target this police officer with above ground legal activity, make their life a holy hell? Every time they go on the job, everybody knows, and we stand and we see them when they're going in their police cars. That's that one that brutalized that sister. Are we going to put their faces on not wanted posters throughout the community? When they show up at the donut shop, are we going to show up there also? Or underground activity, and we know what that entails. What are we going to do? We end up not doing anything. So that becomes my concern. Is someone trying to get in?
It looked like it. It looked like Kali was trying to get back in.
He was trying to get back in.
But yeah, I don't know how to do that.
How to help the brother out?
Yeah. You know, I like all that discussion of the dual power. I don't know, you know, again, for me, everything comes back to, you know, how do we get people sufficiently organized to do any of these things?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only reason I keep coming back to electoral politics, because in my limited experience, it's been difficult to build a sustained and growing, you know, organization that would be prepared to take on the tasks that you were just describing, or even the work that I'm describing within the electoral process. All of them require some sort of group or organization and unity at levels I don't think we have at this point.
But
yes,
we are living in a time of a movement. We whether we like it or not, whether we're involved in it or not, this is the time. The time is right. So what are we going to do? Other than